Hey, what's happening, you guys? So I got the computer up. I was just gonna I just wanted to have it because I don't normally know how to do all this at once. So right now, like I'm doing the audio, the video, and then I want to be able to have like a tool or some kind of something like a reference tool. I guess is a term I guess to use. I don't have like a lot of stuff I can refer to when I'm just talking to you guys straightforward. So let's try this out. First of all, of course, you guys please like, follow, subscribe to the Tree Line Podcast so we can just keep pushing along this little, whatever it is, this little path we've taken together. This is going to be episode 36. I guess originally the goal was to get to episode 10. So we got to that episode a long time ago. I guess the new goal would be, I guess deep down, I think about like episode 100. I think that's my new goal is to eventually get to episode 100. So I'm just trying to cruise through these episodes. Not necessarily forcing them, but I do want to get comfortable in front of the camera. I want to get comfortable talking on the microphone, and I want to get comfortable using these tools, right? So I guess I'm just gonna type something up, and I was thinking maybe we can talk about leadership today. And I'm not saying I'm a great leader, but I think I've gotten a lot of leadership training in the Marine Corps, and then I just want to see I want to utilize my tool, the internet here, and also be able to speak to you and use the tool at the same time. So let's try this out. I'm just going to type in, let's go to Google, and let's just see what Google's definition of leadership is. And then we'll go from there. Here we go. All right. Leadership. The action of leading a group of people or an organization. That's it, dude. That is such a small definition of a word that I feel like was drilled into my head at least for years, man. I think there's a lot more to leadership than just leading a group or an organization. I mean, yeah, that's what a leadership does. They lead things. I guess to define it more, I think there's a lot of things that goes into at least making a good leader to hold some kind of leadership billet or job. And I think some of these things would be like, for example, discipline. Obviously, a good leader needs to be well disciplined, needs to be able to stay on top of themselves, like not get too out of control. A good leader, I think, self-discipline is kind of goes along with self-control. Like a good leader is not going to go make a fool of himself at the bar. You know what I mean? Even if it's off hours, like a good leader won't show their ass, I guess is a term I like to use, and I've used in the past. Showing your ass, I guess, is just a way of saying being a fool, acting a fool. And I think a good leader is aware of their presence, and they're aware of those looking up to them. Because being a leader, or at least being a good leader, from my experience of having good leaders, I'm not saying I'm a good leader or I was a good leader, but my experience of having good leaders versus not having good leaders is like a good leader is up late with you. A good leader is up early with you. A good leader leads from the front, not necessarily physically from the front, but leads from the front metaphorically, I guess. I'm going to put it like military terms, at least in the infantry terms that I can understand. A good leader, at least on a patrol, I guess is what I'm thinking about when I say leads from the front, but not physically, but more so metaphorically. A good leader can still hold their entire squad from any position of a patrol, using comms and things like that. Hand-arm signals is necessary if comms are, primary, secondary means of communication, whatever. You can maintain control of a squad. It's 9 to 12 dudes in the woods quietly. You're able to do that elegantly, and you don't necessarily have to do that from the front of that element, I guess is what I mean by metaphorically, and not necessarily physically from the front. But a good leader can do that with little to no pushback. Now, when I say pushback, you're going to have dudes that challenge your authority. You're gonna have dudes that challenge a leader's authority. You're gonna have, at least nowadays, I'm sure, like, who knows, historically, I'm sure, like, if you would challenge the authority of that the Hun guy, that the leader of the Huns, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you challenge his authority, he's probably, to Attila the Hun, right? He's probably gonna just kill you. So I guess, like, challenging authority is just, it's cool now. Not necessarily you're not necessarily allowed to challenge your authority in the military, but I guess it's not necessarily frowned upon. Like, if you have a good idea for a mission and your platoon commander put a mission together, but you have a good idea, it's probably a good idea to bring it up. You're not necessarily challenging. You're just, I mean, yeah, you could look at it as a challenge, I guess, depending on the leader. A good leader wouldn't look at that as a challenge. I think a good leader would look at the overall outcome of the mission, and if there's a tactical, better idea, and it comes from a lower level employee, or it comes from, like, a lower level echelon, they should respect the idea if it's tactically sound. You know what I mean? They shouldn't just dismiss it because it came from the lower ranks. I mean, you have to use your tools, man. You know what I'm saying? And your tool is just as, your strongest tool is, like, your youngest private, dude, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But as a leader, you understand that. You understand that everybody underneath you are assets. Assets are liabilities. I guess a good leader is able to identify the difference between an asset and a liability in an individual. So yeah, a good leader is disciplined. A good leader is leads from the front, metaphorically, not necessarily physically, and a good leader is capable of identifying the difference between a liability and an asset. An asset is someone that produces. An asset is someone that gives little pushback and produces, right? And then a liability is somebody that gives either a lot of pushback. It requires a lot of your time to go back and forth with. As a leader, that's not something you have a lot of time to do. So I imagine a liability is someone that gives more pushback. A liability is someone that calls out of work a lot. A liability is someone that gives you their word they're going to be somewhere at a certain time and place, and they're not. You know what I mean? And you can't get a hold of them. Those are just liabilities. You know what I'm saying? And a good leader can identify that early on. You know what I mean? So I guess a good leader is experienced as well, dealing with assets and liabilities. A good leader has enough experience to identify assets and liabilities early on, versus later when it may count more, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Another aspect of a good leader, I would say, is and this might sound weird to some people, but I would say stoicism, man. I would say stoicism. I think that as a good leader, you should be aware that people are looking up to you, and they don't want to see a fool. They don't want to see someone who talks out the side of their mouth way too fucking much. They don't want to see someone who comes quick to judgment, right? When you're looking up to a leader, you want to see someone that only says things when it's necessary and only says important things, right? And you want to look up to someone. You want to look up to a leader that doesn't make himself look like a fool. At the end of the day, like, the leader represents you, and you feel like a fool if your representation's a fool. So I think that a good leader has an element of stoicism to them, and I think that comes from a place where they know that they're constantly being looked up to, constantly. Even listen, man, if you're a leader right now, like, and you lead young men, even at the job site or whatever, in the military, wherever, it doesn't really fucking matter. If you're leading young men or women, I'm sure are similar, and you do this at least 40 hours a week, like you're doing this like full time. Like, these people look up to you even when you're not at work, and they may look up to you in a negative light, which is a sign of not a good leader. Like, you don't want your employees or your lower echelon subordinates, you don't want them seeing you in a bad light, and you don't want them thinking negatively of you. I mean, that's going to make your job as a leader 10 times harder, is leading people that push back. You want to cater to the morale. You want them to be happy to be around you. I mean, if you're going to lead people and you're going to spend at least 40 hours a week with them, I mean, yes, you want to be productive. You want to get the job done. You have to get the job done. The contract says you have to do it, right? But you have to fucking make sure the morale is there. You have to get it up somehow. I don't know if maybe one day you're like, you sit them down. You're like, look, man, I know it's going to be hard. Instead of coming down on them every time they're slowing up or they're, a good leader would sit everybody down and kind of prep them. Be like, look, man, or a little warning order. Be like, hey, man, this is what's going to happen. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy. But at the end of the day, when we all get through it together, you know what I mean? Even if it's a little thing, like when we all get through it together, me and the other guys, the other supervisors, we're going to pitch in and get everybody some pizza. So when the job's done, we're going to sit down, we're going to have some food together, and then we'll cut you guys for the weekend or something. You know what I mean? Like little things like that goes a long way for a leader. Even in fucking the office, where I'm sure if you're working in the office and you got your guys all stressed out over, TPS reports or whatever office is stressed out about. Like I'm sure there's a shit ton of shit to stress out about in an office. But if you're not catering to the cultural body's fucking morale, then it's gonna make your job harder, because now you have a bunch of guys that are gonna push back. They're gonna come up asking you to get out of work early because what they see is a punch, man. They see like a clock. They just want to punch it and get the fuck out of there. And then, but I'm not saying like a pizza party is gonna make them want to stay, but it's gonna show that you're human, that the job is not necessarily something people want to naturally do, and you're going to suck. Your life's going to suck, you know what I mean, together as a unit. And it's just, one, you're going to come closer for it. If you break bread with your boys and you're like, hey, man, this is going to suck, but we're going to go through it together, you will be closer with your boys just from that little sentence versus not giving them a brief, right? And you just walk into your 8 o'clock shift, and then an hour goes by, and little Schmuckatelli over there is looking tired, and you come up and be like, hey, Schmuckatelli, did you punch in today? Then quit looking like a little bitch and wake the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. You want productivity out of them, but had you given them that sentence, like, at 8 o'clock in the morning, prior to an hour going by and Schmuckatelli fucking everything up, if you'd have just been like, listen, everybody, including Schmuckatelli, look, man, it's going to be rough today. It's going to be a rough day today. I promise. It's going to be hard. We're going to sweat, but we're going to get through it together as one fucking unit. We're going to get through it together. All right? And then we're going to sit down and have fucking pizza and laugh about how much of a fucking shitty day we had, but we're going to do it together. If you give them that fucking little 10-second brief in the beginning of the day, you might eliminate some of those throughout the days, literally bringing work sometimes to a stop or to a halt, and then having to go pep talk each and every single one of your boys. Brief them all together as a cohesive unit. Make it a strong unit. Make them want to get into the shit together, because one, if your boys get into the shit together, they're going to be tighter together. That now, not only do they look at you like a leader that's led them into some, shit, right? That people have respect for people that are good leaders and lead them through shit. But two, now they have a brother that they've been through shit with. So now on the weekend, when they're not at work with you, guess who they're hanging out with? Yeah, their buddy. They're having beers with their buddy and a barbecue with their buddy. And they're going to joke and laugh about how tough the week was. And they're going to be like, yo, let's get after it this week. Let's fucking do it again, right? And I'm telling you, man, that cohesiveness, I think maybe it doesn't start with leadership, but leadership has a huge responsibility in bringing their boys together, bringing their employees together, boys or girls. It don't fucking matter. You got to build them together. You got to build that fucking team. And if you don't, then I think that's a sign of a poor leader or poor leadership, and it's going to make your job of leading them harder. It's just going to make it harder. You want your boys to want to be led by you. So you have to give them reasons to want to be led by you. You just have to do it. And if it makes your life suck a little bit more, guess what, man? What I've been told in the Marine Corps many times, man, by leaders, that it's lonely at the top. You know what I mean? And the first thing I said, you can't be acting a fool as a leader. You can't be acting foolish. You can't, you know what I mean, in front of your boys. You can't, because they're looking up to you, you know, as the leader of their cohesive group of getting shit done, getting hard things done together. They look up to you to lead that, right? But when they see you getting drunk and stumbling over yourself at the bar, or, you know, I don't know, fucking doing dumb shit, it's hard to have confidence in somebody leading you if they're just as dumb or dumber than you are, or if you see them in that light, right? So I think the Marine Corps eliminates that issue completely just by like the fraternization clause, which basically means officers and enlisted can't be hanging out together, certain ranks can't be hanging out together. But it eliminates the issue of acting like a fool in front of your subordinates, which it acting like a fool in front of your subordinates is going to affect your fucking it's going to affect your leadership. It's going to make you look bad. It's going to paint you in a bad light, and your subordinates they're not going to have faith in you as a leader. But let's push forward from that. So yeah, acting a fool definitely it means a lot to the boys that follow you. You gotta because the moment you start fucking up, not only the ones that appointed you to that whatever leadership position you were in, they're going to start questioning you. But the more important people, the one that actually follow you, your subordinates, they're going to start questioning you as a leader, which is the last thing you want. And I think that that's when people start getting demoted or getting pulled out of positions and put into other places. Sometimes they'll just pull you from a squad completely, or I'm sure like in the civilian world it's probably similar. They'll pull you from an element completely and put you in a completely new element just to start fresh because you're too close or you fraternized too many times, or not necessarily fraternized, but you're showing yourself as a fool too much. And I say it like you show yourself as a fool. In the civilian world, they probably don't even see it that way. They're probably like, oh, yeah, so I'm getting pushed over to this new store because, it's just a new, fresh start, and the company thinks it's a good idea. Well, the company knows that you get along too good with your buddies that you work with. So now it's hard for your buddies that you work with to look up to you as a real leader. So that's why your company is moving you, not because they can't find another leader in that other area where the new store is at. It's not why they're moving you. They're moving you because you've grown too familiar with your subordinates. You're not as stoic as you should be. You're too buddy. You're making a fool of yourself too often. You might even be hanging out with your buddies that you work with outside of work, which is another no-go because they're going to see whatever light you paint yourself in outside of work at work. And dividing the two is a mastery thing to do. And I think there are some leaders that can do that. There's some leaders that can divide outside work from inside work. Like there's some leaders that if they have to chew your ass at work, they'll chew your ass at work, but then they'll shoot the shit with you after work. And they can do that. And there's some leaders that can do that. And I think that's a strong, just a strong mental pro to have. Like if you could do that, that's a good thing. But then again, you have to be aware that those you're leading are capable of doing the same thing. So I think like leaders at higher echelons, let's say like if you have, let's say the Joint Chiefs of Staff are all sitting in a board meeting. Like I'm sure the president can chew all their fucking ass and still have a stogie with them, afterwards. And they can probably differentiate between the two. And I think that's just because they're at higher echelons of the community, not one of the community, but of the fucking just of whatever company or industry or whatever they're at. They're just at the higher echelon. And I think at higher echelons, it's just easier to divide your personal life from your professional life. Lower echelons, they don't train a lot of people to understand that there should be a divide. So a lot of people walk into new jobs or they go to their new gig and they bring all the emotions from their world, their personal world and personal life into work, and they don't differentiate between the two. They'll go to work and they'll cry in the break room, or they'll go to work and their girlfriend or their boyfriend breaks up with them at work and they get the phone call and then they say fuck it and they lose their shit and they just walk out of work. They can't really differentiate between the difference between your professional life and your personal life. So I don't know where I was going with that, but I think that being able to differentiate between your personal life and your professional life, I think, is a skill that more leaders at higher echelons of industry have. Not necessarily. I'm not saying that people at lower echelons don't have it. I think that especially if you went through the military, you probably have that skill a little better, or you have gotten better at mastering that skill than, let's say, just a civilian straight out of high school. I think that you are better at differentiating the two, between the two of professional and personal life. But just coming out of high school or coming out of college even, I'm not sure if a lot of kids even know that coming out of college. Or I'm sure they might be aware but haven't mastered the fucking skill. And I think that's the difference here is being aware that there's a difference between personal and professional life. Anybody can be aware of it, right? When you go to your job, like, you know, you're going to be a salesman, or you're going for 8 hours to sell something or to build something or whatever. You know that that's your job, your professional life, right? And you know your personal life, you know you got your wife and kids at home, or you have your dog or cat at home. You're like, that's your personal life, right? Like, you know the difference, but not thinking about or talking to your wife and kids while you're at work on your phone texting or whatever. The lines between the two mesh for most people. And I think that's the difference between a good leader, I guess, and a bad leader. Is a good leader is capable of differentiating between the two, and there's a more definitive line there than, let's say, lower echelon or lower subordinates or lower echelon leaderships. That line's a little more blurry. So if you are one of these lower leaders in a company that you work for, or if you're young and upcoming little youngster or whatever, and you're kicking ass at the business and you're getting promoted here and there, dude, just I'm sure you have already know this. Like, you have probably defined that line pretty well between personal and professional life. To be successful, I think, in any industry, you probably have to have a definitive line there. There can't be much of a mesh, because the more you mesh, who knows, man? I'm just saying personally. Like I said, everything I'm going to say on these fucking podcasts are my personal opinion. In my personal opinion, a good leader is capable of making a definitive line between personal and professional life, and understanding that that you're leading, the subordinates might not understand that definitive line. So you cannot act a fool in front of your subordinates unless, like I said, you operate in a higher echelon industry or a higher echelon performance industry or something where you're making a couple $100,000 a year. You can probably get your ass chewed by your buddy who also makes a few $100,000 a year, and then you guys probably have beers out at the bar after work. I just imagine that line's more definitive in the higher echelon where just more money's at stake. You're willing to get, you know what I mean? You're willing to fucking sacrifice your personal life during those 8 hours you're at work, more so when you're getting rewarded much more money to do so. But when you're paying someone, and I don't know where this is coming from, but when you're paying someone anywhere from $10 to $15 an hour to bag your groceries, you can't really. You can ask them to make a definitive line between personal and professional life, but let's be real, man. The people asking them to do that are general store managers making, close to $100,000 a year or more. So when you're asking someone bagging groceries, make sure there's that definitive line. I don't need your personal life coming into work. It's like, dude, I understand that you've mastered that skill, and if you're a subordinate, dude, I completely understand where you're coming from. So when you're talking to your general manager, you're like, listen, man, I understand that you've made a definitive line between your personal and professional life because you are rewarded a ridiculously more amount of money than I am. I'm sure you could say that to them. It's probably not going to faze them. They're not going to give a shit because they're just going to hire the next schmuckatelli to come bag groceries because you understand your job's much more replaceable. So maybe that's where you have to outweigh defining the line, I guess. As you grow up, the more you learn, the more you define that line. The more you know that, like, I am replaceable. I make $15 an hour, especially in today's economy, which cost of living around here, most people aren't making $15 an hour. So, like, it's just ridiculous. But people are literally slaving for pennies to the dollar because all their money is going to paying rent and fucking paying their. It's just crazy, right? And then we're giving money to Ukraine and shit. Anyways, I'm just going ranty real quick before I cut this off. But what the fuck was I saying? Yeah, so I think you get better at defining the line the more you realize that you are replaceable. At $15 an hour, you are not you're not the best schmuckatelli at doing schmuckatelli things. There's a million other schmuckatellis, right? So just So I think the older you get, maybe the couple, little lower echelon jobs you get throughout, your first couple years of being an adult, I think you start to learn and understand that you do want to define that line just so that you can leave your personal shit outside the job site and it doesn't affect your life. And I guess that is one of the first steps of becoming a leader is identifying the line between professionalism and personal life. But I mean, we talked about a couple things. I mean, there's a lot of things that goes into being a good leader, and I don't have them all written down here, and I'm sure there's a bunch of shit I'm missing. But empathy, like you have to empathy is another thing that's great about leaders. So like we talked about, that you're going to have lower echelon, lower subordinates that can't define the line between professional and personal life, and they're going to bring in their personal problems, and they're going to cry at work. They're going to fucking cry about their dog died or their dad died or fucking. That their wife left them or something. They're gonna cry. They're gonna have fucking mental problems. They're gonna bring them to work. Now, when I say a good leader has empathy, it doesn't mean a good leader is gonna cry with them and just be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're going through this." But a good leader is gonna be like, "Look, man, I get it, man. Look, dude, I lost my dad last year, bro. If you want, man, take the rest of the day. Get in touch with your family. If there's something you guys are planning on doing, just keep me posted. We're gonna keep your job here. Just take care of your family, dude." If you do that, you talk to them for 10 seconds, just like that, dude. Like instead of saying, "Look, man, we all got personal problems. All right, my dad died last year. Look, you gonna show up to your shift or not?" It's like those two different approaches is the difference between a good and a bad leader. I've seen it every fucking day working in the civilian world. You'll see the difference. A good leader is just empathetic. A good leader literally will, and I say empathetic is like putting yourself in their shoes, right? And I guess like you don't necessarily have to do that to be empathetic, right? Like I said, for example, the example I used, I guess, is empathetic because I did lose my dad, and I'm just using that as an example. Like if someone were to come to me and say they had just lost their dad, but it really doesn't matter. Like if somebody fucking had a nuclear explosion in their community and it killed everybody and they still showed up to work, I'd be like, "Oh my God, man, I can't believe you're going through that. Look, go take care of your families." I'll still treat it empathetically. Like I will feel bad. I will feel the bad that they're feeling, and I'll try to portray that to them and let them know and feel secure about their job and position here. And I'll take the heat with the store manager. If I'm, the lower echelon manager, I'm just saying, if you show empathy to your subordinates, they're going to remember that, and they're going to keep coming to work. People want to be around people that act like they want to be around them as well. So if you show your subordinates that you want to be in the trenches with them, you want to go through the shit with them to get to the other side together in one cohesive fucking unit. If you want to show them that, or if you want them to believe that you can do that, you got to show them empathy. You have to show them that you want to be there in the trenches with them. And I don't know if I guess today was really supposed to just be a chilling episode, but I wanted to get into leadership, I guess, and we could dive more into it if we really want to, but I think like a good leader they have empathy, they've got discipline, they can identify and define the line between personal and professional life. Okay, and they can identify those that work with them or are lower echelon to them that cannot define that line. And those that cannot define that line, they do not act a fool in front of, because they need to understand that those subordinates carry an idea of you as a leader outside the job site, whether you believe it or not. So do you want that idea to be a positive or negative idea? Because if it's a negative idea, they're going to think twice about coming back to work on Monday morning. If it's a positive idea, they might not think twice about coming back to work on Monday morning. They're just going to show up like every other Monday morning because they're like, "Hey, I'm going to go work with, this leader over here, and he talks a lot of shit, but he's funny, and we all get through this bullshit together, and he makes it fun." So like, I'm just saying, like little things like that go a long way with your subordinates, man. Just being empathetic and then defining the line between professionalism and personal life, I think is very important. And then stoicism, I think, is the last thing I said, right? Stoicism. Like I said, it just comes down to not acting a fool in front of your subordinates and not acting a fool outside of work, or outside of the military life, or whatever the fuck it is you're doing. Just, A good leader understands he's always being watched. A good leader always knows, always in the back of his mind, that people are looking up to him. They are. And it's up to the leader to make sure that those looking up to him are looking at him in either a positive or negative light. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah, all right. I fucking love you guys, and you guys have a great rest of your day. Please like, follow, subscribe, Treeline Podcast, and don't work too hard. Be good leaders. If you're leaders out there, be good leaders. If you're subordinates out there, find a good leader and jump on board. Deuces. Later.